Welcome to Wildspire. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate conversations with entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto, coach, storyteller, and unmarketer at The Awakened Business, helping coaches and change-making entrepreneurs unleash their inspired message and share it with playful unmarketing. I'll ask curious questions and explore uncharted waters with my guest today. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. My guest today is David Jurasek. Now, David showed up for this conversation, which was the first time we'd spoken together, with such openness and curiosity that I was a fan immediately. He was so ready to play and explore, and really did. He showed up with a vulnerability and an invitation just by his very presence to go deeper. That for me was a true gift. We talk about embodying your wild, primal nature, navigating the darkness, and inviting people into the depths when it seems like they just don't want to go. David is a proud father, grateful husband, humbled sensei, curious therapist, and very playful community leader with over 25 years' experience in founding and running wild and creative projects like an empathic improv theater company and a therapeutic martial arts school. His life's work is building a village of exceptional men invested in growing their relationship muscles called Powerful and Loving. Now join me for this beautiful conversation with David Jurasek. David, it's so wonderful to have you here today. And as we were just chatting in preparation for this conversation that we'll share, I was just struck by the gift of you and the way that you're showing up here. And we've never spoken before this. And I visited your website, and I don't know a ton about you. But I was moved to invite you, as you were saying that you were looking for more opportunities to share. And I it felt right. It just felt right. I didn't even need to do digging, which is really cool. And your willingness to show up here the way that you are, which, we're about to explore what that is exactly. But yes, but the feeling of that is so beautiful already that I'm really grateful. So thank you.
Stephanie, we're in a community together, and I've been watching you and just getting your vibe and your integrity and how you show up. And I had the same feeling, like, of course, I don't even know what we're going to talk about, but of course, I want to be here.
Oh, isn't that amazing that we can recognize each other that way? That what if everything in our lives and in our businesses and everything we're looking for is that easy? That, when I see it, when it appears, I'll know it. And I don't have to go out on a hunt for something. I have to chase things down. Wow.
Yeah. I feel too, when I work with people, either as a therapist or as a mentor and run groups, every single person I work with, I choose them. I'm very discerning. I say, you sound like, you're seeking me out. But sometimes it's like, no, I think you need to see my other friend. I think you need something else, because it's an investment of time. Time is so precious. There's got to be this feeling of like, I choose you. You choose me. And for this time, we're going to play and engage and relate, see why we're here. We're going to discover why we chose each other.
Oh my God. I really feel that as you say that, David. And I think that must be what I was responding to right away as soon as we started talking. I had a conversation years ago with a friend about choosing. And like, what if you choose yourself? What if you choose someone? There's just such a precious gift in that, in choosing this moment that we get to share together, like Christmas morning or Hanukkah or whatever it is that people celebrate, like that, like the present. Oh my goodness. So you had mentioned a warm-up is this it? Or is there something?
This feels like a warm. I'm getting warm already. But I often, I guess, we're sitting, we're on the Zoom call, we're in this, people are listening. I believe that it's really good for me. My body tells me it's really good for me to get embodied in conversation. And so I like to do something physical, mental, emotional, spiritual right at the beginning to just kind of warm up all the senses. And I have a pretty huge bag. I'm trained originally as a drama therapist, so I have a huge bag of games and tools, but it's really simple. Like, hey, Stephanie, what part of your body feels like it's neglected or it's tense or wants to be woken up? It starts with that, just listening to the body. And then you pick up part of the body.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. And so if anyone listening can do this too for themselves.
Anyone listening. So we're all on this journey together, right?
Okay.
So for me, I often feel my shoulders. I feel like I carry a lot. So I feel like just shrugging, just a little shrug. And then I like to slow it down and like, move my shoulders in ways that I don't move them. And I'm not following an exercise model or trying to get the kink out or do anything. I'm just like, my body just goes, you just want to tighten those. And then you want to elongate, or you want to wiggle, or you want to sway like seaweed in the water, just something in that part of me is waking up and is asking for, love that. And you raised your arms in the sky and you're doing the sway, and that feels so good. So that's it. That's the easiest thing in the world is, it's like when we're thirsty, we reach for a glass of water and we take a sip. So the body has its own invitations all the time. I just try to remember that and come back to my body.
What a beautiful reminder. Wow. I'm just experiencing such a sense of that invitation to the present, an invitation to choosing in your presence, that I just almost want to go like, okay, David. Yeah.
I'm so here. Much. That's perfect. So where do we go from here, right? Everything is here in this moment.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that we're both involved in, work and business and creativity and spirit and soulfulness and mindfulness and playfulness. And like, which thread do we pull and talk about more?
So what are you noticing?
I just, right before our call, I was listening to our friend Bradley Morris from Magic Media, and he was doing an interview around the booby trap on the internet. It's a really great episode. And my favorite part of that really stayed with me for, as I was waiting for this call, was the embracing the void and the darkness, the loneliness, the boredom, feelings of unhappiness or impatience with ourselves. I often think about navigating the darkness. So identifying like what are the forces that sabotage us, and instead of them being in the dark sabotaging me, let me get to know them, befriend them. Let me hunt them out and find them and befriend them and evolve these characters inside of me. So they're more my allies instead of my saboteurs. And I think about like dark emotions and wounds that we all have that drive us in ways that we don't often want to be driven. Like for me, for example, my biggest wound growing up was not feeling seen. So even now I'm trying to get off social media. That's one of my goals this fall, is get off that damn drip. I I left last year. I came back in. I did an experiment. I learned a lot, but the conclusion is it's not giving me what I need. But I'm finding it hard because I want to be seen. I want to be heard. And can I embrace that part of myself and love that part of myself and give it nourishing food instead of junk food? The junk food of, ooh, how many likes did I get? Ooh, how many people saw this or heard that? I farted. Did anyone notice? Like it's junk food, and it really makes me feel more empty. It's filler. I want more soul food, and I give soul food, and I want to receive soul food, and so that's coming up for me this morning. And I'm like literally viscerally, I do a lot of body scans and getting to know parts of myself. I feel really in my heart, and my mind is very inspired. My gut, I swear, it's like the undiscovered country. It's like if you had like a piece of land and you kind of tended different parts of it, it's the swampy part of the land that's overgrown. So I'm on a journey to understand more my gut, my more primitive, primal parts of myself, and how to nourish myself more with deeper. And your whole Wildspire, like what? That's so evocative to me. It's like wild. I keep feeling like I'm being called by the wild. I live right next to a ravine in a big city, Toronto, and it's like a block away. There's the wild. And I go there sometimes and I get lost in the thicket of it.
What is the wild in you, David?
Well, I have a really cool foil. As we got a cat recently. He was flown in from Egypt, a street cat. And he's a tabby. He's an Egyptian Mao tabby, and he is wild.
That's like a mystical, magical cat you got there. Oh my goodness.
And we are like half the time pulling out our hair. My wife and my daughter and I, like, what's he doing now? Ah! And another part of me is delighted. Part of me is like, yeah, he's wild. I love it. He's a hunter. He just wants to pounce and play, and it's inconvenient. And it comes at the worst times. But I admire that. So I have some kind of tiger, jaguar, or something inside of me that wants to pounce, wants to seize life and rip it open and enjoy it and be on the prowl, searching for more adventure. And sometimes I can bring that into my parenting as a father. I can bring that into my relationship with my wife and my work, especially. And sometimes I don't know what to do with that wild cat, crazy part of me, I got to get shit done. I have stuff to do. I have to take care of them taxes and do that paperwork. And where do I put that part of me? So that part of my journey is like staying embodied, staying really present physically and emotionally is helping me to honor that. It's a great question. I want to ask you, Stephanie, what's a part of you that's wild, huh?
It's part of me that's wild.
Yeah, I've got this. I'm holding up a magnifying glass. I want to look at you more closely.
Ahead. And you can tell me. You can tell me what you see. What do I notice?
Yeah.
You know what? This is interesting, and I'll toss this up for your reflection. Yeah. I still sometimes use the language of parts of me, and there were years ago I was trained in neuro-linguistic programming, which I really don't use except in the ways that it's become a part of my embodied way of being, which it has. Some of it has, And we used to do this thing called parts integration. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you probably have encountered something like this.
Yeah.
And previous to that in therapy, I loved parts work. integrated family systems, right? Like it so helped me at that time to like recognize and give voice to the different parts of myself. And, so for a long time, it was about bringing them together or getting them all on the bus so that we can all go on a ride together, right? Everybody's on the bus. Everybody has a voice who's driving, like, okay, my fear, if you've ever heard that, is it, it's not Brene Brown. Who's the quote? Elizabeth Gilbert quote about fear is not driving the bus. You've got a seat, but you're not driving.
Yeah.
So when I think about the wild part of me, I don't think of it now as a part.
Right.
I think of the wild as an experience that moves through me sometimes. And even just inviting it, it starts to go, woo, like I can notice it like, oh, what is the experience of wild? So my experience of wild in this moment, it feels, what is it like? It's kind of giddy, but it's not overpowering. It's sort of ready for an adventure and also knowing that it's having an adventure in the moment and really enjoying that. So the bit of a giddiness is like a wondering of like, oh my gosh, where are we going? What's happening? And that feels kind of wild, but it's not like a crazy wild that in this moment, it's like it's a playful wild. It's a, let's see what happens kind of, roll the die and see what comes up kind of wild, it's like that.
Well, I love it. I don't know. I got a image of a dolphin, but then something in the woods, like a puckish kind of energy.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Let's play some tricks on people, David.
Well, this whole podcast, right, is a trick. Like, what is this about? What are they talking about? What's the point? Where is this going? What are they selling? Like, what? Right? Like, I think that's the beauty of play is there is no a floor to stand on. Things keep shifting and changing, and nobody's in control here. At least I'm not in control. I don't know about you.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So if you are going to, I mean, we already kind of are. I was so intrigued when I looked at your website and read a little bit about your background, about playback theater. And I went to one experience. I might have gone twice years ago, and I loved the idea. So like, would you summarize what it is for people who don't know first?
Well, I'll tell you the story of my first playback theater experience. I was a young 20-something, 20, actually I was just 20. And I got a backpack and I moved across Canada, 3,000 kilometers to Montreal. And I signed up for a drama therapy program, like the only one in North Canada. And I got there on a Saturday. I didn't know anybody in town. I had my backpack and I went to the building. So like I need to see the building. And I walked around and it was empty and the doors were open. And there was a sign on the door that said playback theater in session. Someone just hand wrote it. And I heard like tambourines and drums. And I was like, ooh. And it says, please come in. And I was looked at the time. I was like, I don't know. I don't want to interrupt the performance. I was like, but I opened the door really quietly. And there were like 30 people in this room. Chairs were assembled and there was a seat in the back. I hid in the back. But they saw me right away. They waved to me, the actors and the musician on stage. And it was the most amazing experience because up until that point, I was a filmmaker. And I was used to seeing art as a product. You create something and then you send it out and people digest it, right? And hopefully you move them and captivate them in some way that's meaningful. But here I am, I'm sitting in this room. There's just a bunch of people in the front lined up, a musician and this person called the conductor, and they're asking questions of the audience. They're like, okay, it was fall. So they said, how's it going this fall? It's getting colder, it's getting darker. How are you guys doing? And people would just start sharing like, I'm kind of stressed with school. or oh, a friend of mine died, or I got a new cat, or whatever. And they said, okay, thank you. And they took one of those experiences and they would play it back. And I had a few friends who were in improv, you know, where you kind of throw out a thought and they do something funny and you laugh. But this was different. They played it back with movement, with dance, like time just slowed down. And it went into this kind of like liminal, magical space with the music, the acting, the dancing, where it's like, oh, someone got a cat, but what does that mean to them? Oh, wow. There's some love there. There's some joy. There's some beauty, surprise, wildness in their life. And somehow it's captured in like a minute in this condensed, beautiful way. And then everyone's like, oh, that reminds me of when I, you know, went on a trip, or so everyone's moved. And then the next person, and it's like an hour and a half goes by and I feel like I know every single person in that room. And after the performance, people stick around for 2 hours just chatting with each other because they can't stop going, oh my God, you told a story. It was so moving. And so I decided I was in the right place. And I also told a story. I told my I don't know why, but I told my story of being a refugee as a child. And I thought, well, this is such a huge story. How can you know, it's going to take hours to talk about it. But they got it out of me in a few minutes and they played it back. It's like a poem and a series of chapters and beats. And it just like brought tears to my eyes, you know, because I was also like displaced in a new city and I didn't know anyone. So somehow the past and the present came together and I felt deeply seen and heard. And I sought them out and I joined that company the next week. Now, I was a very introverted person who was used to being behind the camera. So I spent the first year doing playback, standing on stage, like literally shitting my pants, you know, like people would choose me to play something and I would have to go and perform, play, and I would just turn into the tree. Or I would be the couch. Or I would do the furniture, right? And people like, and then we rehearsed and I got over I still get nervous. I got nervous about this podcast and I'm embracing that nervousness of like, this is the unknown. This is me going in and not just facing something unknown. This is me encountering a real relationship with the audience. I don't have any agenda other than to listen and to step into whatever arises. And I've had like 20 years of experience of like most incredible. We were in a senior home once where a woman shared a Holocaust story. And there was a man there in the front row who had been catatonic for 5 years. Like he didn't talk, he didn't move, he was just like frozen in time. And after she told that story, we performed it. We had 3 minutes to perform a Holocaust story because the seniors had to go on a bus somewhere. So we performed it and he came alive and he started talking. And everybody was like, oh my God, it's a miracle, right? I've had so many experiences within playback theater, this like the magic of creativity and art in the service of the heart, of real empathy and real listening, where the ego steps aside, where it's not about how does this look? Is it look cool or interesting or funny? It's more about, is this true? Is this what it was like for you? Whether it's a moment in the Holocaust or it's a moment getting a cat or it's a moment, you know, coming into this room late, feeling embarrassed, walking into a weird show. So that, you know, that 20 years of doing playback theater, and you can find playback companies all over the world. It's a very grassroots thing. It's kind of under the radar, but you can find them in most cities. It's a band of weirdos getting together with a lot of empathy and artistic heart. Over those years, I credit that for being what helped me to become a decent helping professional or a decent therapist. It wasn't all the tools and techniques. It was the years of stepping into play scenes of people's lives that I didn't know before I met them. I got to play a grandmother, I got to play a child, I got to play a dog, I got to play so many different roles and find truth in it, because the audience will always keep us honest, right? Like if you said something and I tried to play it back for you and I get it wrong, you're going to tell me. And then I'm going to go, oh, I wasn't listening. What did I miss? And then I'm going to adjust and hear more next time. So it's a beautiful, I think the other layer of it is this is how community needs to be. This is what we've lost. We've lost the art of actually listening to each other and being in the unknown together. Even when we gather, we have all these agendas and get shit done. Do we really gather and make space for what is actually happening in the community, in the relationships? What needs to emerge more spontaneously, more authentically and organically? I think that's a lost art. I think that's what, for thousands of years, little villages to survive, they had to have that. They have to have that nucleus of a heart, a way of gathering around the fire, around meals, where they're not just sitting there eating or telling each other what happened during the day. They're somehow connecting more deeply, and they're aware of each other more deeply, and they're able to navigate all the uncertainty of the world together. So I've been looking for other ways to create that, other rituals. Drama and play seem to be the most potent, the most immediate. But there are other ways, through music, through art, through storytelling. It's this way of being together that I discovered is that food that I'm seeking.
Mm. Mm-hmm. That way of seeing and being seen, hearing and being heard, that's not being fed in social media, for example.
Yeah.
There are so many directions that I could go in what you're saying, David, and I'm like, oh, what is it? Yeah, I think this is something that I feel moved about you, but I think it's also really useful for other people too, as a reflection. Mm-hmm. So I'll share it. That was if I had a little battle, mostly I was just kind of lost in what you were saying and not even really like just being on the ride that you were taking me on. Is that everything that you have just described sounds like your perfect way of being in the world, of connecting with those you're here to serve, as in perhaps in your business, of almost feels like, I want to say stumbling into, but it's not stumbling as in clumsily, stumbling as in, oh, what's over here? Like stumbling upon these delightful experiences that you never could have chosen consciously or planned in your mind. But they're just there for you all around when you follow the little nudges. Like I love the image that you presented of, I've forgotten what it says, like in process, in progress, like, oh, do I dare disturb? And yes, come in, like that feeling. And I wonder, you showed up as that invitation for me right away before I even knew what that invitation was. And I suspect that you probably do that whenever you are present and allowing yourself to. And I wonder what would happen if you just did an experiment of that, of showing up like that whenever you feel like it, not as like a pressure, but just as a play, and where it takes you. So for me, immediately, I'm like, David, come play with me. Come play with me in my community. Come, like it just, I'm like, yes. And like, bring that energy. And I can only imagine that there are other places and people that no matter where you go, they're going to respond to that invitation that you are already.
Yeah. I hear you. And you know what comes up for me is great joy and great sadness. Um, and I think I'm trying to grasp what the sadness is. The joy is obvious to me. It's like, wow, you're really present. You're really meeting me here in this place. You know, there's that famous quote by Rumi, beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. That's where I like to go. Right? I want to be in that field all the time. But there's a real heartbreak for me, at least, to discover that there are many people I love and care about who don't want to meet me there, who can't meet me there, who are too scared to go there. And it's not me pouncing on them saying, let's talk about something very traumatic. It's more like, hey, I'm here, I'm present. And they're like, no, I want to look at my phone and talk about really superficial stuff and avoid what's real between us. And there's a kind of a loving, accepting, maybe gentle coaxing that I've tried with certain people in my life. And then there's also like more and more, I'm just accepting that. Okay, people are in a different place. And some of us have tasted real community, real connection, and we're hungry for more. And we keep pursuing more. And we keep facing the barriers to it and removing those barriers. And some of us are not. And I think that's what I'm discovering this fall with people in my life that I really care about. That I'm in the deep end, and they just want to. They can only put their toes in, and that's all they want. That's all they say they want. And letting that be, and trusting that there are other people who are already in the deep end too, and are like, wasn't it amazing here? I'm like, yeah, it's fucking amazing. Oh my God. And we're like, yeah, and that's enough. That and there's also like, I've been running communities for over a decade, and there's also something imperfect and heartbreaking about community, where we do show up really deeply for each other, and how beautiful it is, and how fulfilling and deep it is, and also how imperfect it is, how messy we all are. And there's like a world of difference between I have some skill, and I have a brand, and I have a community where I give advice to people. That's not really a community. That's a really cool structure for helping people. And a real community of like, I'm showing up more fully. I have expertise and a certain genius in some places, and I'm also quirky and weird and messy and ornery in some ways. And so if you're in community with me, you get all of me. That's actually, I'm leaning into that more and more, and that just being human, being multidimensional. And then how do we then, the question for me that's arising mostly is then, how do I do that, stay true to myself, build this authentic community around me, and also do work in this world? And how much do I share in this world? How much does the world need to see of me when I go out there to serve, to help? There are all these gradients, of everyone's talking about being authentic in the public sphere, but how actually, no, I don't want to talk about the intimate stuff going on in my marriage. That's not for you or for anybody. That's for me and my wife. But maybe I want to share parts of that in service of helping other couples, or I want to share the time in my 20s where I was suicidal, because I will serve someone. But now I feel ready to do that. I have the resilience and strength to hold that. And if someone listens to that story or reads it somewhere and takes offense or criticizes me, I can take that, So there's a lot for me about the interface of having a rich, deep life and how to be public. a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I don't come with a lot of answers.
The exploration, the question is, let us, what is the Rilke quote? Let us live into the questions, and one day we might live our way into the answer. That's life. Life is, for me anyway, life is like an unfolding question. It is this curious, I wonder what this is. I wonder what will happen if. And so, again, like so many things that come up in me when you talk, like there's so much, it's so rich. It feels like I'm really responding to some kind of invitation that you are presenting in your presence. And I really like it, by the way. I'm really enjoying it, the whole ride of it. I'm so delighted. One of the things I noticed even in your website as I was looking at it was, we might call it paradox, or we might call it polarity. That there's this ability to be with it, and also this need to like be with that, like to allow for all the experiences, all of the pieces, the light and the dark, like without having that comes with you. I saw something about the paradox of power and love that you talk about a lot. Mm-hmm. And what came up for me when you were talking about the joy and the sadness is that I think quotes and things are arising in me from hanging out with you. I don't know what that doesn't usually happen. Usually I have to grasp for them. Not exact quotes, but I'm like, oh, Alan Watts said that whenever we have the thing, we also have to have its opposite. Mm. So if you have love, we also have not love. That's the experience of separation. If we have joy, we're going to have the experience of not joy, which we might call sadness. They are two sides of the same coin. They just are. And whenever the one awareness of one arises, the possibility of the other is also there.
Yeah. And
that doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It's just how it is as a human, with this experience of separation that we have. And that's okay. Like there's actually a beauty in that too, when I allow for it, when I go, oh yeah, that's right. There's so much joy in life, and there's so much sadness.
Yeah. Oh, that's so, how that settles into me really deeply is I have so many experiences through playback, through theater, where I would be hungry. I would skip a meal and I would be starving. And after the performance, I would be so full. I couldn't eat. And I was like, what is this fullness? It's a fullness of story. It's a fullness of emotion. And it's a real fullness. It's not, every time someone told a story about something joyful, the next person would tell something sad. And then the next person would tell something redeeming. And then the next person would tell something surprising. And they would just, by the end of every performance, it was like a full spectrum of this is humanity. This is our collective unconscious. It's all of these characters, all of these themes, all of these emotions, every color of the rainbow. And I always felt so full in the best way. And I guess that's the challenge for me is when I go online to be public, I bring that fullness, but the response I get is a flattened two-dimensional response. Unless it's like, like an interview like this, where there's actual space and time to feel and unfold. But I've experimented on social media, like putting out really rich content. And then I get dozens of people saying, oh my God, that's so amazing. Bye. I'm like, that's not a conversation. That's like being at a loud shopping mall with a party where everyone's drunk and the music's too loud and you're having a deep, soulful something and someone goes, oh wow, that's amazing. Bye. And okay, I'm glad that, you like the color of my shirt or you like the words that I threw out, but there isn't the reciprocal back and forth. There isn't the shared presence. And that's been my, that's been like, so the call for me now is to find other ways to leave breadcrumbs in the world that are deep and soulful, and not try to be in that other space.
Yeah, that sounds really clear in what you're saying. And that's just social media being what it is, kind of shallow and superficial, with the potential for deeper connection. Like that is what I see is like having a breadcrumb there can be an invitation. And it's just knowing that this is how social media behaves. This is how it is.
Yeah.
And some people will follow you back. And I'm not suggesting you have to be there. I don't believe that you do.
No, it's been amazing to find certain people in that space.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't find anyway. And and it's just it's a really great contrast, actually, I realize, because we can do things in a public way that are really rich and deep, but we have to set it's not the dominant way of being. We have to set the stage for it. I'm really intrigued by your term on marketing. It's like, how do you set the stage and let people know that you're doing this deep thing that is not like the other stuff that they're used to? It's like, how do you set the table when you have my family, we actually grow our own food, and it's like really rich organic food that we grow, that we pluck the moment we're going to eat it, right? How do we set the stage so that our guests understand where they are and what is being served, if they're always used to going to McDonald's or always running to pick up some fruit that has been shipped for 7 weeks and is not actually ripe but has been artificially ripened? And it's how do you clarify what it is you have so that the right people come and go, oh, I've been looking for your table, I've been starving for your food, and get out of all the other noise and not compete with anybody else. Just,
David, you have an uncommon ability to do exactly that. I would challenge anyone who's listening to this and actually really listening to not have that experience of exactly the invitation that is available with you. You just described it from the start of our conversation so clearly. It is just a few highlights that, as I recall them, a co-creation, an invitation to bring all the parts of you, to connect deeply, to be in the deep water together, to play, to share, to explore, to release the wild, to become embodied, like all of these things. Like, there's no doubt in my mind what's on offer with you.
Oh, I'm really touched by your reflection. It's funny to me because I spent years training. I also do Aikido, martial art. I spent years getting to a point where I started training senseis, and I started training people in playback, to do playback. And I would watch them when they get into the zone, when they're doing their magic, when their genius has come forth. And I would just be so moved and captivated. And I was like, oh my God, you got it. You're there. And then almost always they would come afterwards and say, I don't know. Was it clear? I don't know. I felt so awkward. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I'd be like, wow, yeah, it can be both. We can be really in our full presence and then have a moment later going, I'm not sure. Was that really who I am? Like, there's that funny self-doubt that can creep in even when we deeply know. We know what we know. We know who we are. So thank you for your reflection, because that really helps.
Yeah, sometimes we're in the flow, present, just being. And sometimes we're caught in our thinking about it, our doubtful thinking about it. Me too. Yeah. Doesn't mean anything's wrong. That's just part of the human experience.
Mm.
You know, there was something else that you said that has stayed with me enough that I'll speak to it because I saw it. I actually saw it. And this also isn't usual for me. I'm seeing some things. You're very interesting, David. Like,
you've unlocked your psychic powers.
Oh, they've been unlocked, baby. They just come in all different forms and flavors, right?
Right on.
Let's just be clear about that.
All right then. No offense. I'm sorry.
I'm just messing with you. So like I have this image of you playing in the deep end. And then as you were talking about like, oh, you know, you're so longing to just invite everybody to play in the deep end with you. And I'm like, don't you know we're all in the deep end already? We don't all know it. We all have access to that same depth and richness and vastness of everything that is. We are made of the stuff. And sometimes we forget. And I see you just playing. Just exploring and playing in the depths that you are led to play in. And just doing that, wherever it is that you go, it's going to wake something up in people. There's not any convincing needed. And if they see it, it's for them. Even if they go away. Like this is something new for me to notice is that because I used to be afraid to say certain things publicly that could be misunderstood, which is anything, ultimately anything.
Everything nowadays, right?
Anything and everything, right? That is actually clearly stated in some way. It doesn't matter what it is, even if it's unclear. Doesn't matter. It's always up for grabs and interpretation. People could always misunderstand it because they live in their own worlds. But regardless, there were certain things that I had labeled that if I talk about this, people might not misunderstand that. And that might accidentally hurt someone. And what I saw at one point was, oh, well, for one, my message is not for everyone. Very clearly. But who is it not for? This is what came to me. I think my message is clearly for the people who go, yes, please give me more. I want this, Stephanie, bring it on, right? And they say it in a singing voice like that. They actually burst into opera.
You're speaking to me.
That's right.
Where have you been all my life?
And I thought, okay, so clearly my message is for those people or the people who are maybe a little less dramatic than I am apparently. And they go, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so if there's those people, right? And I thought, I think it's also for the people who hate it. In the sense that, so let's just say I say something about play in business. I did a while back when I was on social media. I made some comment, post something about playing the game of business. And one of my Facebook friends, he happens to be a storyteller, a very accomplished, gorgeous international storyteller, by the way, love him. And he said, business is very serious. It is not a game. Wow. And he was, he wasn't mean about it, but he expressed his opinion. And I was like, well, okay, cool. And I kind of heard, or I imagined why he would say that. And I was like, yeah, he's responding to the things that happen if we take it lightly and we don't know the impact of what we're doing. Like he's very into the environment and things. But I could have said, that message is not for him, but I think it was. Sometimes there's like a seed that's planted. Now, either in the moment, it may reinforce his own sense of what is true for himself. And he can make, no, it's actually really important. We need to take this more seriously. And so for him, that was for him to push up against.
Yeah.
Or it could be that it plants a seed and it goes, well, maybe I am taking this thing a little seriously.
Yeah.
But I don't like that. I don't like it, but it puts like a little, There's something now stuck in his craw. It may take 6 months, a year or more.
Right.
But people have come back and said, I hated that you said that, Stephanie, but you were kind of right. And I didn't see it for a long, long time. Like my message, it seems to me, is for the people who are drawn to it and also there sometimes. I don't know this. This is not truth, by the way. This is just like how it's seeming to me. It's also for the people who push against it. Probably the only people it's really not for are the ones who are like neutral.
Yeah, indifferent.
And they don't even notice it.
Well, I want to commend you for that openness, because I see a lot of people who only want an echo chamber. Yeah. Here's my drum, I'm beating it. If you agree, you belong. If you don't, get out of here. And I love that you're so spacious and dynamic to go, hey, I want you, if you don't agree, because there's something there. There's some engagement. There's some truth there. They're going to learn something being in your presence. You're going to learn something from them. There's something controversial about play itself. It's a misunderstood.
Yeah.
For me, in my domain with men, the edge is relationships. Men are so conditioned to be individuals that talking about relationships really, like, I want to talk about my goals, my mission, my productivity, my identity. And so I get the guys who are like seasoned enough, broken enough, open, that they know, relationships actually matter. They maybe are the most important thing. Maybe they're ready for that paradigm. And I get some of those guys who are really self-absorbed and their life is not working. And I provoke them. And sometimes 2 or 3 years later, they come back. Yeah, there's something about that, about being okay with, and just being ourselves is provocative to some people.
Hell yeah. And that's really the interesting thing, right? Like, and some people, it does seem to me that some people tend to find those experiences, because it's really interesting. When I hear people talk about the way the world is, and I go, wow, it is? Like people have that. And it's really interesting, because I'm not saying that what I'm seeing is the way it is, but sometimes it's so vastly different. And even in your experience of, guys are conditioned to be individual and they don't want to talk about relationship. I'm like, really? Because I talk to all these guys and like, they are so about relationship. The men who are showing up in my life are like, not all of them, but like every single, like I look at them and I'm even thinking now, I'm challenging myself to think about the ones who I would say are not about relationship. I just don't see them not about relationship. They just allowed it differently. And so it's funny that you said that. And I was like,
thanks for that. Thanks for that. Cause that, if I'm more accurate and honest, I get that sometimes, but what's more true is that I used to put relationships second. Even play was second to my ambitions, to what I thought I was here to do. So play was at the service of that. Relationships were at the service of growth and growing my business and growing my sense of identity and purpose. And when I had cancer a few years ago, that's when it all collapsed for me. This idea of growth for its own sake is actual cancer. It's capitalism. It's unsustainable. It's unreal. And for me, it's flipped, that relationships come first, and everything I do, including my business, is a pretext to be able to play with my friends. So nowadays, I'm phasing out as a therapist too, because nowadays therapy doesn't actually allow me to make friends, sadly. So I'm becoming a mentor, and every time I consult with somebody, I'm trying to sniff out, do I want to be friends with you? Because I don't want to just help you with your XYZ problem that I know I can help you with. Other people can do that. I want to choose you and see that there's potential that after we help you with your problem or your goal or whatever, that we could actually be friends. We could actually be in community. I would be comfortable with you meeting my wife and my daughter and spending time in our garden. And I'd want that. I want to go out and die get old and die in a way where I have made lots of friends and I've made an impact in their life. I've touched them with the thing that I have to offer. But more importantly, they're my friends. They've touched me and helped me grow. So for me, the priority now is reciprocal relationship, friendship. Even as a mentor, mentee, I want to work in a way that moves us towards reciprocal community. You know, and at times it's a certain relationship of expertise or authority, but can it have the other layers? To me, I think that's the world I want to live in. That's, to me, the antidote to the things that I think are wrong with the world. And it's the most nourishing, but also kind of scary because it's not the norm. It's a different paradigm. So I wonder sometimes, am I going off into the wild? Will make it out there?
You are the wild, man.
That's true. We all are.
Waking up.
That wild.
Waking up. It looks to me like, and I just want to, first of all, I want to acknowledge and honor that and say how beautiful that is, that your call to invite people into a deeper experience, your call to, like, let's return to relationship and create something reciprocal and shift the way that we've been accustomed to doing things. And I think sometimes I'm like, Jesus, I think I really do live in a whole other world. And I really mean it because I'm like, what isn't relationship?
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of something. What isn't a gorgeous co-creation? You know, whether I'm fully enjoying it as such or not. I mean, that sometimes I don't, but I've had some weird experiences with the medical community lately of like, oh, this moment in the dentist chair, what if it's the most beautiful moment I'll ever of my entire life? Because it is the moment of my life. And just having experience of like, holy shit, like that. Yeah, it's something's true about that. Or like, what if I go in for this test and I don't know what the result's going to be? And I could have a really good experience. Like, I don't know that I'll have a bad experience, at least. Maybe I won't have a good experience. And then I have an experience that surprises me. Like with people who are really caring, and I just see that in them. It's like,
yeah.
There's something reassuring to me. I'll just toss this out to you and see, like, for your consideration, because I know it's been so healing for me. That what if the default is not that we're screwed up, that society is messed up, that our conditioning is bad? What if the default is that we are creative, wild, playful beings who've just got some static and friction, interference of thinking, interference of conditioning. So in other words, the conditioning is never, was never, is not, has never been real, cannot obscure the depth of what we really are. And yet we don't always see it. Like there's a big difference to me, because I really did believe for a long time that, you know, I had people give me this feedback. You know, you've got potential, Stephanie. You got some issues. Fix those issues and the potential can come out. You know, I'm like, and I thought that for a long time. And I'm like, oh no, those issues were never me.
Yeah. Well, there's so much paradox in what you're saying, because to me, because we all have issues, and I do think that they exert influence on our life. You know, I know certainly I've caused a lot of harm in my 20s and even 30s because I was unaware of my projections and my wounds and on my relationships and friends, and I was flaky and I abandoned people and I hurt people. And at the same time, getting to that place where you there's no end point to healing or evolving, but getting to that place where your presence, your soul presence, is bigger than all of those issues put together. That you come home to who you really are, and then it's not like those issues go away, but that you can transcend those because you're aware of them, and you can go, I'm working on those, but it doesn't stop the train. It doesn't limit you anymore. It's just like stuff to play with. It's material.
Yeah.
Right? We need material for a good story or a good play.
Exactly. What kind of drama would we have if we had no challenge? The hero's journey, right? Like even like it's just the flip of it. I know you're onto something, but the flip of it is like, it's like, I just got to clean off my glasses. That's it. Yeah. You know, like, it's really that easy. Like, I've already made of it. Like, oh, that's my natural state. Instead of I have to relearn or unlearn. No, actually, it's just dropping, clearing it off.
Yeah.
And it just feels so much cleaner. And it helps me see that in other people more too. With more compassion. Like, oh no, you just don't know what you are. That's okay.
Yeah. I remember, to me, it's seeing behind the veil and understanding the presence behind the masks, behind the roles.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember a time when I was most vulnerable in my 20s, around when I was suicidal, I had panic attacks, and I failed as a therapist and I gave up. I burnt out, and I had clients who were suicidal. So I was just kind of a mess. And I went on a meditation retreat, and the meditation teacher, and as soon as I got there, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't be present. This too much turmoil inside. I wanted to run away. And he was a comedian. He was a seasoned mindfulness Vipassana teacher, but he was also a comedian. And it was beautiful because he made me laugh so many times. And I had this private meeting with him once, and I said to him, look, I think I need to go home. And he was just very present. He said, what's going on? It's like, well, I just can't do this. I can't close my eyes. I'm having panic attacks and flashes, and my heart's racing. I'm going to die. And he's like, oh, that's so fucking cool, man. And I was like, what are you fucking talking about? It's so fucking cool. It's crazy, man. I'm crazy. I'm losing my sense of identity, man. Don't you understand? He's like, yeah, that's the fucking coolest thing. That's like the next level, man. The next level. And then he described it, and I knew he understood. Like, he had empathy, but he was playful, right? And he said, it's like you're used to like having this sense of who you are, and all of a sudden there's a foundation, there's a floor, and there's the walls, and there's like the sense of you, and now there's this pit of darkness, and you're falling down this pit, and there's no bottom, and there's nothing to hold on to. Is that what it's like? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. And he said, and he gave me this question to meditate on. But this is what blew my mind open to that state that you just described. He said, when you observe the panic, the self-loathing, the shame, the grief, whatever, it's all important. It's all valuable. But notice who's noticing all of that. Notice who's noticing it. Who is that? Who is the one noticing all of this? And that day I had this breakthrough of like realizing that I was not even my deepest, most visceral reactions. I was not that. I was the one observing that. And I didn't sleep all night. And I just lay there just in wonder and go, whoa, look at shame, guilt, fear. Whoa, that's painful. But I'm over here watching it. I'm the actor in the play going through a really painful moment, but I'm the actor. And I remember going outside in the middle of the night when everyone was sleeping, and there was a river, and I lay in the river and I just let it carry me. And I'm terrified of. I was terrified of water. I had a near-death drowning experience, so that was not usual for me. That was like another scary thing. But something about that, eh? To see who we really are underneath all of the layers and behind all the parts. There's something. I think of it as kind of eternal. There's something in this present in this moment, but it's timeless. And I like to. My hope in all my relationships is to try to reveal that presence to the people that I care about. To kind of note and see all of their layers and help them to go, what's behind that? I see it. Do you see it? Oh, it's right there. And it feels really easy to do that with you because you're there. You're like, yeah, I'm already there. Me too. This is all a game. This is all a play.
Mm. And yet every time, David, that you show up as with that knowledge of yourself, with that awareness of the eternal self, the capital S self, playing as the lowercase s self, as David, I see it too. I can't help but see it. Now, this persona, right? Like this appearance of the divine. I am this appearance of the divine. You are that one, right? So I might actually recognize that, and that's what I'm seeing, and be like awestruck. Okay, like as I may be, right? Somebody else is going to see it and think, well, what a nice guy. Somebody else is going to think, what's up with that dude? Do you know what I mean? But like, how can we not see it? And it just seems to me that when you are that, it's an invitation for me to wake that up in me. Right. Even a tiniest bit. And it makes such a difference. I see that. Like, I just know that it makes a difference. I see it send out ripples of change. I'm starting to see people respond to me in ways that I'm like, what? Doesn't even like, huh? How is this happening? Like, it's really fascinating. But anyway, it just.
I love that. You know, what delights me about that is playing with people's perceptions. Oh, they see a white guy with a beard and, he must be this, he must be that. And then I like to go, oh, I see your projection on me. Well, I'll raise you one. And I'll reveal another side of myself that they're like, what? You can't be that. You can't be all of this and all of that.
So like a part of what it seems like the game that you would like to play, the game that's playing itself through you is a little bit of that provocateur, which happens through me differently, but it's happening through you too. It's like, like, of course there's going to be some pushback because that's what your game is playing. That's what it's inviting people to. It's like, let's stir it up. Let's bring it up. Let's look at all of this and then go, oh, that's not what we are.
Right.
What else?
Yeah. For me, the game is to thicken the story and widen the palette to the point where their brain can't hold that black and white, you're in this box and I'm in this box. And they start to crack open and become really unsure of identity, or they become multi-dimensional. And then, that's where it gets really interesting when I work with people and they start to accept themselves as contradictory, paradoxical, multidimensional. And I was like, now we can really get started. Now we can go back to whatever the focus is and we can have more fun. We can enjoy the process. We can go, wow, yeah, you're being victimized in this moment, but you also have a pretty fierce, powerful warrior, and you are very playful, and you've got all these other wise parts and all this, so let's bring them all forward and see what happens. And then everything becomes magic. Everything becomes about surrendering and letting things emerge instead of trying to force it or push it in some direction. Yeah.
Cool.
It's hard to talk about, though. I appreciate talking to you about it because sometimes I think of like Rumi and Hafiz, those Sufi poets. I'm like, they're so good at talking about this, but they never really talk about it. They're pointing to it. I think that's what we're trying to do in this podcast today is we're pointing to the place that's hard to describe or put to words at all. And maybe my hope is somebody listening gets a nudge in the right direction and gets intrigued and hungry and thirsty for that we're talking about.
I kind of suspect that they're feeling it, whether they know it or not, just a little.
Well, I need that reminder all the time too, because I'll lose my sense of that. I'll turn away from that divine, and then get lost in my roles and my persona and my place in the world, and then thanks for reminding me, Stephanie.
Thanks for reminding me, David. Thanks for being in that space with me. I think this feels like a good place for us to end for today. Only for today.
Yes. Never-ending story.
If people are interested in this, a deeper conversation, this kind of co-creative relationship community that you're inviting people into, where is the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, so I always want to tell people come to my community, we're awesome. I want to tell them trust your own compass first. Maybe it's the talking about the playback that makes them look for a playback company in their city or nearby.
I'm talking about the ones who are looking for you, David. They want more.
Yeah. So I know, but I want to put that in there because
yes.
my ego is not invested in this is all about me and I'm here to get clients or something. It's I know, you know this, where it's about something deeper. So I'm kind of in the transition of hanging up my shingle slowly as a therapist. So I still see people in Canada as a therapist and it's great work, but it's limiting. And I'm really invested for the rest of my life in growing groups of communities for men, a community for men that's relational. And often the guys who come in, they're already really fathers and husbands and partners, and they're at that time in their life when they know relationships are key. But it's not just relationship to your loved ones, it's relationship to our bodies, to ourselves, to our guts, to our sense of time, to our business. We have a way of gathering and it's adventure based and it's relational based. So we have a master heart group that we meet and we're working on an adventure based training. Not really a training. No, it's not a training. It's an adventure based initiation. We're trying to find the right words. We call it Wild Heart. And we're launching that in the fall in October. But for me, the long game is that I'm growing this village of men that I want to get old with. So people can find us at powerfulandloving.com. And we're always up to something wild and weird. So they'll find us there.
I love it. Thanks so much for joining me for today's Wildspire conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wildspire email from me filled with inspiring stories, unmarketing experiments, tips for playing your way to impact and income without the hustle and hype, insights from my spiritual business journey, and more, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/Wildspire. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.